Welcome back to the channel, everybody. If you're new here, welcome aboard. Today the topic of discussion is wood chips. Now, we use wood chips around our whole entire property for numerous things and activities. So the most common one that we are known for, most people found our channel from, is usually our compost heating. We use large, massive piles of wood chips, inoculate them with nitrogen and water, and mix a whole bunch of greens in there in order to be able to create a bunch of free heat throughout the winter months. And this takes 11, 12 ton piles, massive piles of wood chips, and we still see fluctuating temperatures even with that. Aside from compost heating itself, we use wood chips all over the property for our perennials, our fruit trees. We use them to heel in. We'll just set a pile of wood chips up and then we will heel in a bunch of perennial pots. We have a lot of perennial pots in the greenhouse. And we use the wood chips as a top dressing. Some of our sifted wood chips, we put it on the top of the pots to hold a lot more moisture and slowly feed those perennial potted plants that we sell at our market. Now, we also dry them out and use them for free BTUs, such as in our greenhouse stove. So today I just want to break down and run through the process and talk about wood chips to hardwood and palletized wood. Just want to run through it real quick, and if all that sounds interesting, please consider subscribing. Let's get right into this. Get the sweatshirt on here. It's a chilly, cold day. I had to pull the mic off my undershirt. So heading on over to our sifted wood chips, we've got our compost heater. Dumped one load of wood chips in here so I could kind of build up our air lines, so it's not such a fight pulling them through as the tractor is dumping the rest of the wood chips. I want these air lines up midway to the tank there. Got some cool experiments coming for the tank itself. All of this green matter out in our garden is all going to be going into the pile also. All right, what we were out here to talk about, large pile of chips here, and we've got this large sifter. Now you can see there's some good chunks of wood in here that would otherwise just be composted into nothing, and you can see everything that's fallen through here. I got a piece of sheet metal down here, very small stuff. Now this is the stuff I was talking about putting on the top of our pots there, and this is all the stuff we're just going to take a shovel and we'll just keep heaping all of them up. So taking a step back, we just take our shovel as it piles up down here and we'll throw it back through and just kind of tap the whole system with the shovel as the small pieces fall through and the larger pieces that we're saving to burn come right back down. We just had rain like the other day, yesterday, and these wood chips are basically dry already because they have that screen they're sitting on. They've got good airflow. As long as it's not currently raining, they're going to pretty well be dry. So once we get all of those wood chips back there off of our sifter and we bring them over underneath this shed. Now we collect a ton of rain from this shed. We've got this little gutter system up here going over to our 55-gallon drum. This is basically my storage shed. It's a little cluttered right now. We're going to be using that wood chipper here in the next video or two. So we always keep a couple 5-gallon buckets. I always like to have a hole because they will hold a little bit of moisture, so I want to let them breathe. As long as they're not getting rained on, no holes in here. We have plenty of wood chips to be able to burn, and we've got a little bit left over there from this initial load. We've got 2, 3, 4 more loads of wood chips coming, and we will build it up just like last winter. All right, it is cold out here. I showed you guys everything I wanted to show you outside the greenhouse here. Whew. Oh yeah, it's like 75, 80 degrees in here. I need to take a sip of coffee here this morning. Keep me going on all the projects. I've got a list of projects longer than my leg that I'm always working little bits on every day. So we've got all these wood chips here. You can see we've got lots of different size pieces, nothing too big, nothing too small. We've got a lot of larger pieces out on the sifter currently right now. Plus, we've got a ton of trees on our property. We're always harvesting wood and cutting it up ourselves. So you can go through the process of cutting up pallets. You can go through the process of chainsawing and splitting wood. And we've got a very small little opening here. Nice and hot. Anyways, we've got a small opening on this stove because it was made for charcoal. It was made for coal burning back in the day. This is like a 50s or 60s stove here. And they used to heat up laundry water. And one of my subscribers told me that this was a cowboy stove. They used to pack it out, take it apart, and set it up in the middle of the desert to cook with and stuff. So that's quite interesting. Little piece of history inside the greenhouse. But having such a small intake for the fuel source leads us to only be able to use certain size wood. I'm not buying charcoal to use and burn. That could get very costly. We want to do everything as cheap as possible on this channel. So that leads me to why I'm using wood chips. They flow. We can fill up 5-gallon buckets and dump them right in, load this thing up, and we can get a couple hours of burn time just off of one good load of wood chips. And we want to make sure they're dry because we're losing a ton of BTUs if they are still damp. You're going to use up more BTUs to dry the wood and then it burns. So let's run through all of the BTU production from all of the different wood sources we have. And I do want to state that naturally wood chip piles are going to just sit in piles unless you level them out on a tarp or something like that, or on a large screen. So the more wood chips sit in a pile, the more they're going to decompose, the more moisture they're going to soak up. Hence why we are drying them on a nice flat surface with a whole bunch of screen. We've got a ton of little sifters and stuff like that. So we can set up a ton of little sources to store all those dried wood chips underneath our shed. Even in the middle of winter, it's pretty dry air in winter. So we don't have much issue obtaining and retaining dry wood chips. We want to use 1 ton of wood chips as a base measurement. So if we've got 1 ton of relatively dry wood chips, they're going to have some moisture. You've got about 4 cubic yards, or about 11.5 million BTUs potential to be burned out of that entire ton of wood chips. So if we're pulling wood chips by the bucket or shovelful out of the center of a pile, they're probably going to be damper, and you're going to use a lot more energy to dry them as they burn, creating steam. All that moisture's got to boil out and burn off of the wood chips. So using dry wood chips is much more efficient and better for your system. You're not creating a whole bunch of soot and crap inside of your chimney and stove itself. 1 ton of wet wood chips, or 4 cubic yards of damp wood chips, is going to give you about 8 million BTUs. So we've already lost 3.5 million BTUs. That is an absolute ton of energy in the process of actually just drying the wood chip before it can actually burn and produce heat for the greenhouse. So let's talk about solid wood like our logs or our pallets, because we always get free pallets and we just cut them up and reuse them for building things or burning. So 1 pound of solid wood is going to give you about 7,000 BTUs. Now upscaling that to the 1 ton of wood chips we were comparing to, we've got 1 ton of solid wood. 7,000 times that 1 ton is going to give us about 14 million BTUs. We're at the same amount of gap between wet and dry wood chips to solid wood. So we've got about 3.5 million extra BTUs from just not having all of that wood broken up into smaller pieces. Now pallets are free. A softwood pallet or the smaller pallets have about 231,000 BTUs. And larger hardwood pallets, usually they're made of more solid wood, those are going to have about 338 to 340,000 BTUs per pallet. Now that is pretty significant, and if you're going to take the time to just cut them up with a Sawzall or a saw, you can get a lot of free resource, a lot of free energy to burn throughout the entire winter, but you have to put a little bit of work in. So the least amount of work possible and the ease of feeding this potbelly stove, just pouring a bucket or shoveling in wood chips, it's super easy, super easy. So that is basically what we've done for the past couple winters since we've had this stove. On those really cold nights when the polar vortex comes or it's -20 outside, we will come out, load this thing up, and we've had plenty of experiments heating up this black tank over here and all of these hoses and stuff, just running hot air into our geothermal, just experimenting a ton with all of the free energy that we have coming off of this stove that cost us little to nothing and All we have to do is put a little bit of work in to achieve it. The biggest problem is drying and storing. So I built that massive sifter where I could just throw a bunch up there and let them sit for a day or two in the sun or in the wind. So in a previous video, we ordered a whole bunch of little fans. Now this is a heat-proof, waterproof fan, and I'm hoping that it will last for what I want it to. We've got this metal piece of black pipe right next to our exit exhaust for our stove, and that picks up tons and tons of heat. And in years past we had two fans right there, one blowing through the flags of our bricks and one blowing through there, and those fans definitely took a beating. They were there for 2 to 3 years and they both still worked. They just didn't work as well because I believe the bearings were getting too hot. So I'm going to put together another solution, some type of experiment here to blow more heat off of the stove. This little guy, the Peltier device fan, turns heat into electricity. So it's really cool to have that as a source of moving the heat, because without any type of air moving source, it just heats up and slowly radiates through the entire greenhouse here. And it takes a long time for that heat to get to the other side. And I wanted to start this fire today to help us dry up our greenhouse pond here. So we've got a little bit of work yet to do. That is coming along nicely. Once it's level, the liner is going in. So this video has ran a little bit longer than I wanted it to. I just wanted to share some fun facts and how we're saving and storing wood chips and how we're using them and why we're using them in this stove. This stove has probably been one of the main centerpieces of the greenhouse. I've got a few logs in there right now. Oh, just a couple little logs or a full load of wood chips, that thing will put out heat for most of the day, especially if the sun's out. You really don't have much issue with it. But a day like today where it's completely cloudy, we've got barely any solar activity, geothermal's barely cranking, but it's doing its job. It's still putting out 50 to 60 degree air down there. And that was when I had the back door open and I was out here working. 40 degrees coming in the greenhouse, and it's taking that 40 degree air, turning it into 55, 60. So definitely works. And before I rant anymore, I'm going to let you guys go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned. We've got a ton more videos coming on the way.